Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 8 of Uzumaki Naruto, Birth of the New Demon King. If you guys enjoy this what if, and want to see part 9 of it, comment down below, and let me know. The like goal for this video is 200 likes. So like this video, to let me know that you're interested in this series, and you want the next part. Check out my new videos of My Hero Academia what ifs in my second channel, and give it some love as well. Link is in the description. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. The light breeze blew through the arena, kicking up a small cloud of dust that passed between the two opponents, who were standing on opposite ends of each other. Naruto had a light smile as his posture was somewhat slouched, and he looked for all the world like he wasn't about to face the kid who was last year's Rookie of the Year. Neji on the other hand was sneering. The long-haired Hyuga again opened his mouth to speak. He had found out a long time ago that if you insulted people while remaining as cool and collected as possible, it made your opponents angry and unable to think clearly. And because all Hyuga were taught to read other people and keep an impassive face at all times, his mocking was made even more effective. However, before he could even get a word out of his mouth, the Hyuga prodigy found a foot being smashed into his face, hard. It felt as if the entire right side of his face had caved in, and his jaw had cracked. There was a moment where his head was snapped to the side, right before he was sent flying backwards. So surprising and painful was this hit that he couldn't even flip himself around to land on his feet, and ended up eating dirt. Neji skidded back across the ground for several feet, leaving a decent-sized trench in his wake before skidding to a stop. For several seconds he just laid there, wondering what the hell had hit him. What he hadn't seen and the entire audience had, or to be more accurate, seen but couldn't keep track of, was Naruto. The blonde had noticed Neji had been about to open his mouth, and already knew the overrated Hyuga boy had a propensity for flapping those gums of his. So he had decided to act before Neji could say anything, making liberal use of Shundo to appear in front of the long-haired genin, and plant a boot in his face. The speed technique wasn't as effective as it usually was. Naruto figured it was about 4 times slower than his normal Shundo. Not that he hadn't expected something like that. Naruto was not using his Yauki, as that was poisonous to any human that was not a Jinchuriki, and he didn't want to kill the prick, just make him suffer, and even they would have trouble with his Yauki. Instead he was using his human chakra, which while much stronger than any genin and on par with the Kage, was nowhere near as fast as his Yauki. I can't use too many of those, he decided as he checked his chakra stores. That one move had used 1/4 of his reserves. That was the sole reason only high ARS class demons could use Shundo, because it required vast reserves of power that most demons simply didn't have. I'll rely on my normal techniques from now on. Still, I'm rather pleased how this match has started out. Not wanting to lose his advantage, Naruto blurred as he ran towards the just now getting up Neji. The older genin saw him coming, and if the slow widening of his eyes and the dilation of his pupils were any indication, he was rather surprised by the blonde's speed. Neji was only just able to block the blonde's first attack, a palm thrust to the chest. He used the fluid style of the Hyuga clan, the Gyuken, to redirect the attack. At the same time he poured chakra into Naruto's arm, knowing that even if it wouldn't be as effective, since he had yet to get the chance to turn on his Byakugan, it would still hurt the blonde attacking him. However, once more to Neji's shock, it seemed as if Naruto was completely unaffected by the invading chakra. The blonde merely twisted his body, and launched a reverse heel kick, one which Neji dodged effectively, by moving to the side. As the blonde continued to attack, Neji continued to block. Even without his eyes he could see the boy's movements, even if just barely. Little did the Hyuga prodigy know that all of Naruto's attacks were merely a distraction. The blonde Uzumaki's true plan came to the front, when several hands sprung from the ground, and grabbed onto Neji's feet and legs. Said boy looked down in shock. What? He didn't have a chance to say any more than that as Naruto grabbed the boy by the head, and launched a devastating attack with his knee into the boy's face. The clones disappeared and once again the Hyuga prodigy was sent flying. Birth of the New Demon King. Up in the stands everyone was staring in utter shock as Uzumaki Naruto, the dead last of his class and who many people thought of as either the loser or the demon, depending on their prejudice against him, beat the kid being hailed as the greatest prodigy to a bloody pulp. Holy shit. Kotetsu said, his voice denoting just how shocked he was if the currently gaping jaw he had didn't. Uzumaki is pounding the Hyuga into the ground. Really? I hadn't noticed, replied Izumo in a dry tone. Though from the way his white eyes never left the battle, it was clear he was just as surprised as his partner. I think we may have to reevaluate our opinion of the kid, he's nothing like I expected. Kami, he's brutal. Oh man, this is gonna ruin me, Kotetsu whined. I out nearly 1000 Ryu on the Hyuga to win. That should just teach you not to gamble, said Izumo in a chiding tone. Kotetsu just slumped in his seat. Whatever. Birth of the New Demon King. Every single Hyuga in attendance winced as they watched their prized shinobi receive an earth-shattering punch to the stomach that sent him flying backwards, where he crashed into the wall and left a large crater. Neji Wani-san is getting really beaten, said a small little Hyuga girl. Hanabi was the little sister of Hinata. She had dark brown hair with long bangs and white eyes, a common trait shared by all Byakugan users. She was wearing an armless blue V-neck shirt with a mesh blouse underneath and blue shorts. I was told no one could beat a Hyuga in taijutsu. Isn't our Jayukin supposed to be the best? Father. She looked up at her father, Hyuga Hiyashi, who was the current clan head of the Hyuga clan. He had long dark brown hair and featureless white eyes like all members of his clan. He was wearing very traditional, loose-fitting robes with a cloak. The man didn't even look at his youngest child as he stared in shock at seeing the son of his brother and the best Hyuga in generations get decimated. Birth of the new Demon King. Can't do much when you can't even activate those white eyes of yours, can you? Taunted Naruto as he launched a barrage of fists Neji, who grimaced as he did his best to block them. Several managed to get through, and each one made Neji feel like he was being hit with a steel bar. Even those that barely touched him hurt worse than anything. Not even Lee could hit as hard as the blonde before him could. Neji was once again launched away when Naruto managed to sneak a foot in between his ribs. The long-haired Hyuga winced as he skidded back, falling to his knees the moment he stopped. Neji managed to lift a hand to wipe off the blood that had accumulated near his mouth, spitting the amount that was in his mouth out as he glared fiercely at the boy in front of him. Everyone knows that Byakugan is the most powerful taijutsu in the world. You're just afraid to face off against me at my full power. Naruto chuckled. Is it your way of trying to trick me into letting me use your eyes? He grinned and cocked his head to the side. Still, I don't want anyone saying I didn't fight you at your best. Very well, I'll let you use those eyes of yours, and I'll even going one step above. Here, catch. Neji blinked as his hand instinctively caught the tiny object that Naruto had thrown at him. What is this? He asked, looking at the small green bean in his hand. It's called a senzu bean, Naruto said. They have amazing regenerative abilities by using your chakra to promote healing. Eating a senzu bean can heal even people who are on the verge of death. They are very rare, in fact, I only know one place that grows them. And it's not in the human world, the blonde said to himself. Senzu beans were actually grown in Nakai, and were a secret of the Kitsune clan. Kyuubi had told him that she had created the senzu bean by splicing several different plants and herbs she had found in both Nakai and the human world. And only she knew how to make them. How do I know it's not poisoned? Asked Neji with a sneer. Hahaha. Are you serious? Asked Naruto, laughing the boy's comment off. I don't need to poison you to beat you, I've been kicking your ass for the past few minutes just fine without help. Of course, you can just toss it if you want. Though if you're going to do that I would rather you give it back. Those things are pretty rare after all. Neji grimaced as he realized that Naruto was right. Much as he didn't want to admit it, the blonde was beating him handily. He placed the bean in his mouth as swallowed. The effects were almost instantaneous. All of his wounds regenerated in an instant, his broken bones healed, his cuts left his body. All in all it felt as if he had not just had his ass kicked. However, rather than be grateful, Neji gave Naruto an unpleasant grin. You're going to regret healing me. Now that I'm at full strength you stand no chance. It seems fate is on my side. Ha, you think so? Alright Hyuga Neji, let's see if you can beat me. Naruto reached up to his face and pulled off his sunglasses, crushing them in his hand before he let them drop. The grin he was wearing threatened to split his face in half. Let's test your taijutsu against mine. Birth of the new Demon King. All around the stadium people were talking about the eyes of Uzumaki Naruto. Not many people knew of the Rinnegan, the most powerful taijutsu, grade 3 eye techniques, in the world and the one that was said to hold mastery over all the world's jutsu. Some wondered if this was some kind of trick of the demon. After all, there was no way the Kyuubi brat could have a taijutsu. Was there? For those who were in the know however, and knew the legend of those eyes, stun would be too small a word to describe what they were feeling. Many couldn't help but wonder, how did Uzumaki Naruto, the dead last, the loser, the demon of Konoha, gain the most powerful of all 3 Daisen taijutsu? None were more stunned than Jiraiya, who had hidden himself in the very back row of the stadium to see his godson. I can't believe it, he muttered with a voice that would have let anyone near him know that he was in a state of shock. Twice in a lifetime, it shouldn't be possible. How could he have the Rinnegan? Birth of the new Demon King. Likewise, up in the Kage booth, Sarutobi was in a similar state. The Rinnegan, he breathed, feeling like he had just gone through 3 heart attacks. When did he get that? How did he get it? The disguised Orochimaru was also having a hard time coming to grips with what he was seeing. How is this possible? He has the Rinnegan. The same eyes as the Rikudu Sennin, who was said to have given us jutsu. The same eyes as him. He cursed his stupidity in writing the boy off now. The Sharingan was a pittance compared to the power of the Rinnegan, the ability to master all 5 chakra elements. With that power there was no telling what he could accomplish. I can still get him if I play my cards right. It may not be now, but those eyes will be mine after the Chunin Exams. Birth of the New Demon King. Asuma, are those what I think they are? Asked Kurenai, her voice in a state of shock. I don't know, what do you think they are? Asked Asuma. There was no sarcasm in the man's words, he too couldn't believe what he was seeing. The Rinnegan. Yep, looks like it. I don't get it, said Sakura. Who cares if Naruto Baka has that Rin Thingy? It's nothing compared to Sasuke-kun's Sharingan. And yet again the little slag opens that big flap of her, before she knows what she's talking about, said Anko. Listen up, Pinky. The Rinnegan is the most powerful of the 3 great Taijutsu, more powerful than both the Sharingan and Byakugan combined. It is said that the wielder of the Rinnegan can completely master all 5 forms of nature transformation that form the basis of ninjutsu. It was said that in times, when the world is in disorder, a person is sent down from the heavens to become either a god of creation who will calm the world, or a destroyer who reduce everything to nothing. Very little else is known about those eyes, but the legend goes that the man who gave us chakra, the man who due to his power and desire for peace was known as the savior of the world. Sakura gawked for a moment before huffing and turning away. Sasuke-kun's still better. Anko, Asuma and Kurenai all rolled their eyes at the girl, no longer caring if they got to her now. As far as they were concerned, Sakura was a lost cause. Birth of the New Demon King. What are those eyes? Asked Neji as he stared into the dark blue eyes with the silver ripple pattern. They're called the Rinnegan, a taijutsu that was said to have belonged to the Rikido Sennin, the man who brought us ninjutsu, Naruto said, smirking at the look of shock upon his opponent's features. Now, I didn't heal you just so you could gawk at me. Come, Naruto lifted his hand, and made a get over here gesture. Neji hesitated for a moment before charging towards Naruto who stood completely still. When Neji was less than a foot away, Naruto pointed his palm towards the boy and muttered, Shinra Tensei. The Hyuga genius only had enough time to see the flare of chakra before he was sent flying backwards. He slammed into wall, feeling as if he had just been hit by an Akamichi trying to run him over. He barely had time to even register just how much pain he was in before he heard the blonde mutter, Bansho Tenin, heavenly attraction of all creation, and Neji was once again flying. This time he came soaring towards Naruto, as if someone had hooked his chest with a fishing line and was reeling him in. Naruto cocked his fist back, and the moment Neji came within range, smashed it right into the older Genin's gut. Neji hacked up blood as his stomach caved in on itself. He flew off the fist, smashing into the ground and skidding along before coming to a stop. He would have tried to get up, but it felt like all of his internals had been liquidized. He couldn't anything save the pain he received from the punch. As his vision began fading out, Naruto came into view. Ha, the blonde said, that smirk still on his face. Looks like having your taijutsu turned on didn't change a single thing, did it? Those were the last words Neji heard before darkness claimed him. Naruto yawned as the fight finished. He couldn't help but find fighting humans to be boring, even those Saint Beast guys gave him a better fight, and they were pathetic. Well, except for Suzaku, he was pretty decent, though half of that was on account of Naruto being arrogant. But well, can't pick all your fights. He looked over at the proctor who was currently gaping at him, face pale like he had seen a ghost. Yo. Proctor-san, how about calling the match? Genma blinked several times as the words registered. Right, Shasa. Uzumaki Naruto. The silence was so vast it was like you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was so shocked by what had transpired that no one even knew what to think. Naruto shrugged as no one clapped, he didn't rightly care what these people thought. Hundreds of years from now, he would barely even remember these faces. He was beginning to walk off the arena floor when it started, clapping coming from the Kage booth. Soon enough the fire daimyo, who had come to view the village's talent, began clapping as well. Applause began coming in from other areas. Naruto could make out Asuma, Kurenai, and Anko clapping enthusiastically, with Anko even yelling "Way to go Gaki" at the top of her lungs. He thought it was odd that she was so psyched about him winning, but shrugged it off as irrelevant. Smiling, Naruto held a hand in the air. The crowd began to roar its approval. Truthfully, their applause didn't mean much to him. Only the approval of the few people he cared about in this village really counted. Still, he couldn't deny the feeling was nice. He looked up at the Kage booth and looked at the Sandaime, who was clapping and smiling proudly at him. He nodded once before turning around and making his way up to the fighter's booth. As soon as Naruto walked into the fighter's booth, any and all conversation that had been taking place stopped. Everyone turned to stare at him, expressions ranging from shock to fearful. He couldn't hold in a chuckle when he noticed that no one could meet his gaze, even Gaara was unable to keep his stare. He walked over to where Shino was standing and greeted the other genin with a nod. Shino returned the nod with one of his own, before going back to staring at nothing. Birth of the New Demon King. Neji lost. Tenten couldn't help but rub her eyes several times, thinking it would fix her vision, because there was no way this could have happened. Neji lost. Neji never lost. Ever since they had been genin, Neji had never lost a match, never lost his cool. Neji never lost. I can't believe Neji lost. What's more, he did not only lose, but he lost to the dead last. An extremely powerful dead last who just beat Neji in an almost straight-up taijutsu match. A dead last who, if the mutterings around her were to be believed, held the most powerful taijutsu in the entire world. A dead last who in the span of 1 week went from a skinny loser with a loud mouth to a hunk with muscles on his muscles and a typical bad boy attitude to boot. Just who are Uzumaki Naruto. Birth of the new Demon King. Oh man, Raikage-sama is not going to like hearing about this. Hearing about what? That one of the Hyuga he's so set on getting just got his ass kicked. Or that Konoha now has a person wielding the single most powerful taijutsu to have ever existed. Both. Well, there's not much we can do. We'll just inform Raikage-sama of this latest development and let him figure out what to do. Right? Birth of the new Demon King. Ha! Anko crowd as she danced around in her seat. It was rather disturbing, or highly erotic, depending on which gender you asked, to see the woman squirming and dancing in her seat. Did you see that, Nichan? Did you? I knew that Gaki was going places after I saw him during the prelims. Yes, I saw what happened, same as you. Kurenai rolled her eyes at her friend's joy. I'm not sure what you're getting so worked up over. You look like someone just gave you Orochimaru's head on a silver platter. The red-eyed beauty was the only person besides the Hokage who could even mention the Hibi-san in around Anko without getting her head bitten off. Yeah, I just feel this connection with the kid, Anko said, calming down. We're the same, him and I, you know. I do. If anyone could understand how Anko felt, it would be Naruto, who was even more hated than Konoha's snake mistress. You know, I was thinking, seeing as he did such a good job, maybe I should give him a reward. Anko. Kurenai looked scandalized as Anko licked her lips. She knew her friend was just joking, or at least partially joking. It would surprise most people who didn't know, but Anko was a virgin. Another surprise would be that Kurenai, who most considered to be colder than ice towards men and a hater of perverts, wasn't. What? Said Anko, grinning as she noticed the blushes on the faces of damn near every girl within hearing distance. The little Hyuga girl had already passed out from a nosebleed. You can't tell me you weren't thinking of fucking him as well. I mean, look at the Gaki. He's got muscles on his muscles, and you know what the Anbu have said about his stamina. Kurenai blushed a deep shade of red. Naruto's stamina was rather legendary, able to keep the Anbu chasing him after a prank for hours on end. No one knew the true limits of the blonde's stamina. If that same endurance could be applied into the bedroom. Damn it, Anko. Kurenai shouted, shaking her head. Why do you do this to me? You said something very similar about the Yondaime when he was still around too. And besides, Naruto's what? 12. 13. He's way too young for us to even be thinking about. The red-eyed woman trailed off and blushed at what she had been about to say. Ah, don't be such a prude, Night-chan. Anko chirped with a laugh. He's a shinobi, isn't he? That means he is more or less an adult. Old enough to kill, old enough to drink, old enough to fuck. Besides, look at that body. Does that look like a 13-year-old body to you? Asuma listened to the two women talking inside. Maybe Shikamaru was onto something when he said women are troublesome. Unfortunately for him, his words must have been too loud, as both Anko and Kurenai stopped talking and turned to him with full-on glares and killing intent. Damn, I should learn to keep my mouth shut. Birth of the new Demon King. Will Uchiha Sasuke and Sabaku no Guard get down here for the next match? Called Genma after the nurses had managed to get Hyuga Neji on a stretcher and left. Genma actually fell pretty bad for the kid. While getting pulverized like that would be tough for anyone to cope with, getting the crap beaten out of you with thousands of people watching was just humiliating. A few feet away, Sabaku no Guard appeared in a swirl of sand, arms crossed in his standard pose. His face held a look of impatience about it, though even that was barely visible to others due to how impassive his face was. The crowd began to grow restless when Sasuke had yet to show up. Many were wondering where the last loyal Uchiha was. Boos began to sound from the people who had come here just to watch the Uchiha fight. Uchiha Sasuke, come down to the arena floor or you will be disqualified this instant. Genma said again after 5 more minutes of waiting. Birth of the new Demon King. Sir, Uchiha Sasuke still hasn't shown up, Raito whispered into his Hokage's ear. The crowd is starting to get restless. Sarutobi sighed in both disappointment and worry. Raito was right. The Hokage could hear boos being shouted out. People wanted action, especially after seeing such an incredible battle from the previous match. It seems we have no choice, Sarutobi said. Uchiha Sasuke is hereby disqualified from the Chunin Exams for being late. The Kazekage turned to look at him. Hokage Dono, I think you should reconsider. Many of the people here came to see the Uchiha heir. Not showcasing him could cost you a lot of business. The aging Hokage looked at the Kazekage, or to be more accurate, his disguised student. He pondered the benefits of bumping up Sasuke's battle for later in the day. However, he remembered the message that Naruto had given him. When Uchiha Sasuke is late, and considering who his sensei is, we both know he will be, disqualify him. That will disrupt Orochimaru's plans long enough for you to somehow get a message to your forces to let them know what is going on and prepare. Yes, the Sandaime decided that Naruto's idea held more merit than Orochimaru's. I had not realized you cared about how much business Konoha received, Kazukage-sama, Sarutobi said in a slightly chilling tone. It was the kind that you let know you had stepped over a line, and going any further would be unwise. If Uchiha Sasuke cannot show up on time for something as fundamental as an exam for his own promotion, then I can't expect him to show when something even more important comes up. Thus, Uchiha Sasuke is not qualified to be a Chunin anyways. Uchiha Sasuke is to be disqualified. He looked over at his Jonin guard, relayed that to Genma. Hi, said the Jonin before he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Damn that old man. Orochimaru seethed at the Hokage's words. Of all the times for him to grow a backbone, it has to be now. He calmed down after a few seconds. He could still make this work. I will have to change my plans, but that's alright. This could be an opportunity for me. That Hyuga boy was not able to give Naruto-kun a proper test of his abilities, and I doubt the other genin here will be able to from what I have seen. However, Gar can. Yes, the plan was perfect. He would use Naruto and Gar's battle as the new stage on which his invasion would begin. He might even get lucky, and Naruto would be weak enough from fighting Gar for capture. I understand, Hokage Dono, he said to Sarutobi. Forgive my impertinence, I was just so excited to see how my Gar stacked up against a shinobi of Sasuke's caliber, that I forgot myself. Sarutobi nodded. It happens to the best of us, I'm afraid. Now, let's get the matches started. Birth of the new Demon King. Due to not showing up on time, Uchiha Sasuke has been officially disqualified. Boos were met with Genma's announcement, and from the look on Gar's face, he also seemed displeased that he would not get to spill someone's blood. The next match will be between Sabaku no Kankuro and Aburame Shino. Will both contestants please come down to the arena floor? Birth of the new Demon King. Shit. This isn't good, thought Kankuro. I don't want to show off any of my new abilities with Crow before the invasion starts. Proctor-san. Kankuro called out. I forfeit. More boos were met with that announcement, with many of the people beginning to get angry. They had come here to watch people fight, yet only one had happened so far, and the one everyone had been waiting for had been cancelled. Needless to say, Kankuro's forfeiting had not gone over well with the people watching. However, Genma merely called out the next two people who would be fighting, those being Temari and Shikamaru. Temari opened up her fan and flew down to the arena, making a big show of her abilities. Shikamaru on the other hand. What are you still doing up here, Shika? Asked Naruto as he looked at the lazy genin with his Rinnegan eyes. This is all too troublesome, Shikamaru said, yawning. I think I'm just going to forfeit. If you even think of forfeiting, I am going to kick your ass to the moon and back, Shikamaru. Actually no, Naruto smirked as a thought came to him. If you don't compete, I'm going to tell Yoshino-san that you quit the Chunin Exams before your first match. Shikamaru paled. You wouldn't. He knew what would happen to him if his mom heard he quit before he even fought. She would use her special frying pan no jutsu, copyright patented, and beat his ass so hard it would make anything the blonde in front of him could do pale in comparison. Every Nara feared that jutsu, which had been specifically created to get a lazy male Nara off their ass and work. Naruto gave the lazy boy a very disturbed grin. The fact that his eyes were being overshadowed by his hair, and all he could see were those creepy swirl eyes, only made it worse. You are obviously forgetting who you're dealing with. Remember, I'm the guy who dyed the entire Hyuga clan's clothing bright orange, and hung their underwear in the streets of Konoha. The guy who snuck into Anbu HQ and put itching powder in their clothes. The guy who... Alright, I get it. Jeesh. I'll go fight the troublesome woman, you damn troublesome blonde, Shikamaru grumbled. Good. Oh. And Shika. Shikamaru turned back from where he had been walking to see that creepy smile on the blonde's face. Make sure you work hard or I'll still tell Yoshino you were slacking off. Shikamaru gulped but nodded as he scurried from the room. Naruto watched the lazy genin go, and leaned against the railing, to look out at the arena with a content smile on his face. This should be interesting. Birth of the new Demon King. Temari waited with a scowl on her face as she watched Shikamaru move towards the ring at a snail's pace. Seriously, it had taken this kid like 15 minutes just to walk onto the arena floor. Get your ass over here, before I beat the crap out of you with my fan, lazy bones. She shouted in a threatening tone. Whatever, troublesome blonde, Shikamaru muttered as he stopped 2 meters away from Temari. It was hard to tell since his typical slouched posture and lazy expression hadn't left him, but the few who knew Shikamaru could tell he would rather be anywhere than where he was. Are both fighters ready? Asked Genma. His answer was for Temari to fully unsheath her fan, and for Shikamaru to just let out a lazy yawn. His sweat dropped. Right, well, begin. Kamitachi no Jutsu, Sickle Weasel technique. Temari launched her jutsu the very moment Genma started the match. She swept her fan at the Naragenin, and launched a powerful gale of cutting winds. The wind tore up the land as it headed for Shikamaru, smashing into him and sending him flying backwards. Only for him to disappear in a puff of smoke and a log to take his place. Where are you? Shouted Temari as she looked around the clearing with narrowed eyes. Come out or I'll force you out. Man, this is so troublesome, thought Shikamaru as he crouched down behind a thicket of trees. He looked up at the clouds that were lazily passing by inside. Man, sometimes I wish I was a cloud. Just floating along, going wherever the breeze takes me. That's my style. I just don't like putting effort into doing anything troublesome. The only reason I became a ninja was to do whatever I wanted. God, he knew this would be so much work. Maybe he should just quit the Chunin Exams now. That would show everyone, it's not like he cared what these people thought. All I ever wanted in life was to marry a regular girl who isn't too ugly, and not too pretty. Have 2 children, first a girl, then a boy. Retire after my daughter is married, and my son becomes a successful ninja, and spend the rest of my life playing shogi or go. Then die of old age before my wife. Shikamaru, like his father before him, the famous Shikaku, and his father before him, Shikamaru, held the same uninspiring dream, to be relatively average shinobi. Which was why it was so unfortunate that all males of the Naruto clan held a vast intelligence and propensity for planning innumerable strategies against superior opponents. Fine. If that's how you want to do it. Temari made another swipe with her fan. Kamitachi no Jutsu, the large gale of cutting winds tore into the trees, slicing through many of the branches like they were made of paper. Shikamaru was thankful that he was hidden off to the side of the trees that got hit. Of course, as was his lot in life, Temari sent another wind jutsu into the tree line, this one getting dangerously close to hitting him. Ha, it's troublesome, but I get I've got no choice, Shikamaru thought to himself as he made several hand signs. Temari's next jutsu slammed into the area he was in, covering the entire spot in a large cloud of dust. Temari looked at the devastation her jutsu had caused and smirked. Ha, that ought to take care of him. What? The smirk left her face as a shadow shot out of the dust, moving towards her at a fast pace. Acting quickly, Temari folded her fan and began to backpedal, as she attempted to keep away from the shadow that was chasing her. It was surprisingly fast, and almost got her. Thankfully it stopped, its form staggering, before it was forced to retract. Temari used her fan to draw a line where the shadow stopped. I see your angle now, Temari said, her eyes narrowing as she looked at Shikamaru, who was holding a hand seals. You almost had me for a second there, you're pretty clever. With that Kagame jutsu of yours, you can manipulate any shadow you're in. The wall's shadow for instance, or the trees. But there's a limit, isn't there? No matter how far you stretch it, your shadow can only move so far. Isn't that right? Shikamaru's face twisted into a grimacing smile. You got me. Temari smiled as she found out the weakness of his jutsu. He could only stretch his shadow to a total of 15 meters give or take. So long as she stayed out of his range, he wouldn't be able to touch her. Staying over 15 meters away from him meant she would have to use long-range attacks, but those were her specialty, so she wouldn't have any problems. This battle was as good as over. Shikamaru sighed as he closed his eyes and put his hands together in a circle pattern. Temari and everyone else that didn't know Shikamaru wondered if the new hand sign was some kind of jutsu. Only Asuma and his team knew otherwise. Birth of the new Demon King. What kind of hand sign is that? Konkuro wondered out loud as he too saw what Shikamaru was doing. Is he going to use a new jutsu? Doubtful, said Naruto, who had heard the cat-suited genin from where he was standing. Kankuro turned to his, shuddering a bit as those creepy eyes came into view. The blonde saw this and grinned. That's not one of the standard 12 hand signs that ninja use for jutsu. I doubt Shikamaru knows any jutsu that are not of his clans, and all of those rely on a specific hand sign. Even if that was a seal of some kind, it wouldn't do any good. The only jutsu that rely on hand seals that don't follow the standard 12 zodiac system are the Kekkei Genkai elemental jutsu, such as ice or lava. No, this is something else. Konkuro snorted as he turned away from the blonde. Whatever he's doing, it won't matter in the end. Now that Temari has figured out his range, that kid is toast. I wouldn't sell Shikamaru out just yet, Naruto warned with a grin. Everyone still in the fighter's booth looked at him. He may be the laziest bastard I've ever known, but Shikamaru is probably the most intelligent person you'll ever meet. That might not mean much when it comes to a straight-up fight, but in the world of ninja, when strategy is the most important factor in battle, he's got it where it counts. When did you become so smart? Asked Ino. Naruto turned to his fellow blonde and gave her a stare, his left eyebrow partially raised. Ino blushed and looked away, unable to meet his gaze. What I mean is, you've never said anything this, well, intelligent in, like ever. Naruto shrugged. I was never stupid, Ino. Uneducated. Maybe, probably. But then, I never had any parents in my life to teach me how to do basic things like reading and writing, so naturally I struggled when it came time to enter the academy. Unlike everyone else, I was still trying to teach myself these basic skills, when you and all of your friends had parents who would help you. By the time I had caught up to everyone else in those skills, I was so far behind that I just didn't care anymore. Oh, Ino's face fell at his words. Truthfully, she had never really thought of how badly Naruto would have had things as an orphan. She only knew him as the troublemaking kid her parents told her to stay away from. Thinking back on it, she remembered that when their sensei had first asked Naruto to come up, and read her fellow blonde had struggled with it, and that had been the start of when people in her class made fun of him. Sorry, I guess I didn't realize how hard that would be. The Rinnegan bear looked at Ino with slight surprise. He hadn't interacted with her much, but she had never been very nice to him. Then again, no one his age had been nice to him. The closest people he could consider friends when he was younger were Kiba, Choji and Shikamaru, and that was only when they were doing something Iruka wouldn't approve of. Once school was out, they were the same as everyone else. It's fine, he said. Most people never think about what it's like being an orphan, especially kids. They usually tend to take things for granted, like having parents to teach them, help them with their problems, or even just tuck them in at night. Most think what they have is what everyone else has, and don't really realize that some of us are less fortunate than others. Everyone looked at Naruto with varied reactions. Some of the genin looked like they were reevaluating their opinions of him, a process that had already happened several times in the past month since the blonde's change. A few, like Ino, couldn't help but feel bad about how they had treated him in the past, without even thinking about how hard it would be to try and do things without having parents to help you. Dara was likewise thinking about the blonde Uzumaki. So he is like me. He has had to rely on himself, and yet, he doesn't fight for himself. What is it that makes him so strong? Why is mother afraid of him? Birth of the new Demon King. Shikamaru opened his eyes. They looked different this time. No longer were they a pair of lazy eyes that didn't seem to care about anything. Instead, they held a look of determination. It was an odd change, and only Temari was close enough to see it. So you do have some fighting spirit, Temari said with a smirk as she opened her fan. I was beginning to wonder. And now that you seem to be taking this seriously, I think it's time we get the fun started. Kamitachi no Jutsu. The blonde Tsunekanoichi launched another fierce gale of cutting winds at Shikamaru, who was forced to cover his eyes as the jutsu came at him. He pulled a kunai out of his pouch and quickly ran towards another tree. Temari scowled. Hiding isn't going to do you any good. Shikamaru grit his teeth as the wind howled around him. Gashes appeared on the trees and several branches were sliced off, with a few of the smaller ones hitting him in the face. Acting as quickly as he could, he began taking off his jacket, leaving him in just his mesh shirt. The windstorm soon died down, and Shikamaru got ready to make his first move. Come on out, coward. Temari said as she threw another Kamitachi no Jutsu at the tree line. Troublesome woman, Shikamaru thought to himself as he tossed a kunai through the dust cloud. What? Temari's eyes whitened as she saw the kunai sail towards her. She jumped out of the way, not wanting to use a jutsu on a single kunai. Before she could even begin thinking she was in the clear, however, another kunai came at her, this one having been hidden in the shadows of the first. Like the previous one, Temari dodged this one too, moving to the side and letting it sail past her. She looked back towards where she knew Shikamaru to be hiding, and saw his shadow coming towards her. She smirked, thinking she was safe, because she had already gotten his range down, and was still behind the line. Only the shadow moved past the line. Temari's eyes whitened as she jumped back, the shadow stopped. She looked over at Shikamaru who was smirking at her. You know, you're pretty quick on your toes, he commented idly. Now I get it, you weren't hiding, you were biding your time. The longer the shadow's on, the more range you have on your jutsu. She figured that was the correct answer because Shikamaru just smirked at her. This meant there was a new variable to Shikamaru's reach. The longer this went on, the more reach he would have. She would have to end this quickly, or he may end up being capable of reaching her anywhere. The sudden shout of Temari above you caused her to look up. There was something floating in the air. What is that? As it came closer, she realized it was Shikamaru's jacket. Her eyes widened as it cast a shadow on the ground, right over her opponent's. Crap. She shouted as she jumped back. Just in time, Shikamaru's shadow began to expand and chase her again. It stopped at about a meter. Temari realized she would have to end this soon, and was just about to launch another wind jutsu when she heard something. A sizzling sound coming from behind her. Turning her head, her eyes whitened as she saw the kunai she had let pass her directly behind her, a small explosive node attached to it and currently sizzling. Reacting on pure instinct, she jumped back just as the node sizzled out. Yet it didn't explode. What? She questioned, right before she felt her body freeze. Moving her eyes down, as it was the only part of her body she could move at the moment, she saw that Shikamaru's shadow had caught her. They rove back over to the kunai with the explosive node, which still had not gone on. I see, the explosive node was a dud. You threw that first one, knowing I wouldn't waste chakra on a single kunai. I would let it stop in front of me, but you kept one hidden in the shadows, making it so that I would instinctively dodge it. After that, you used your jacket to extend the range of your jutsu, all the while bringing me closer to the kunai I dodged. When I heard the sizzling sound, I would think it was a real explosive node, and would be forced to jump back. Right into your shadow. Yep, you definitely catch on quick, Shikamaru said with a lazy grin. And now this is checkmate. He began to walk to the center of the arena, forcing Temari to follow his movements. The two stopped in the middle of the ring, Temari struggling to move every step of the way. Shikamaru raised his right arm into the air, forcing her to do the same. Everyone held their breath. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a kunai. The entire crowd was now watching in anticipation, wondering what Shikamaru's next move would be. Okay, I forfeit. A mass round of face faults accompanied Shikamaru's announcement. What? Stammered Temari, her eyes wide and a look of shock evident on her features. I'm almost out of chakra, Shikamaru explained. This technique will only last 15 more seconds. Before I run out, then I'd have no chakra left to fight with. I don't know about you, but I don't really feel like going up against guys like Naruto and your younger brother when I don't have any chakra to use. As he finished speaking, the shadow that had Temari obeying his every will withdrew from her shadow. See? Shauza. Sabak no Temari. There was no clapping as Shikamaru began walking towards the arena exit, leaving his stunned Temari behind. The lazy genin looked up at Naruto, who was staring back at him with those new eyes of his. Truth be told, I still have around half my chakra left. But if what Naruto said is true, then I'm going to need it for later. Birth of the New Demon King. Flashback. Hey Shikamaru, Shino, mind if I speak with you two for a moment? Shikamaru looked over at Naruto for a moment before shrugging. As he and Shino made their way over, Ino made a bid to follow them. Sorry Ino, Naruto said, however, this is a guys meeting only. What? What do you mean a guys meeting? Ino said with a loud huff. Why can't I listen to what you have to say as well? Oh, do you want me to tell you about how I think Temari should fight topless? Asked Naruto, just loud enough that Temari could hear him. He grinned when both her and Ino's faces turned beet red. Whether from embarrassment or anger didn't matter, it was still amusing. You pervert. Ino shouted, her face was red and there was anger in it. But if the way she was glaring at Temari were any indication, it was not anger at him. At least not all at him. Thankfully she didn't try to hit him. He would have had hurt her if she did. You're just saying that because you want me to say the same thing about you, Naruto replied airily. He left the angry blonde and walked into the hall. So what is this about, Naruto? Asked Shikamaru, noticing the sudden change in the blonde's demeanor. He looked a lot more serious now that he wasn't in the fighter's booth. Naruto looked around for a moment before leaning in, forcing the other two Konoha genin to do the same. Sometime during the Chunin Exams, Suna and Oto are going to launch an invasion of Konoha. Shikamaru's eyes went wide, and though no one could see Shino's features, a buzzing sound could be heard coming from his Kakai bugs. I want you two to be careful not to expend too much chakra in these fights. You're going to need it when all is said and done. How do you know this? Asked Shikamaru, his tone no longer lazy. While he may not like having to work, he knew that there was a time to be lazy and a time to work. Let's just say on my way back to Konoha during the 1-month training period, I ended up running into some foreign ninja where they shouldn't be. It was an evasive answer, but Shikamaru and Shino both understood the gist of what he was saying. Would this be the same month where you got those new eyes? Asked Shikamaru. Naruto chuckled. Sure, let's go with that. Anyways, you should be getting ready for your match, Shino. You know Konkuro is a puppet user, but he also uses poisons. So be careful. I appreciate the advice, Shino said with a nod. Try not to kill. I'm hoping to convince Suna to side with us since Orochimaru killed their Kage. But wait, said Shikamaru. If Orochimaru killed the Kazukage, then who? The lazy Naru's eyes widened and Naruto nodded. Yes, Orochimaru is the one currently sitting next to the Hokage. Not a pleasant thought. Anyways, I want you to be prepared to do your part. As Naruto began walking back into the fighter's booth, Shino began moving down to the arena, and Shikamaru followed the blonde demon shinobi, his mind a whirlwind of activity. When had Naruto gotten so serious? How had he gotten that information on Oto's and Suna's invasion? That wasn't like the old Naruto, nothing at all like the goofball he knew. This new Naruto was something else. Something troublesome. Proctor-san. I forfeit. Shikamaru looked at Konkuro when the Suna genin spoke. Why would he forfeit? Especially when he had been so keen on bragging about making Chunin during the prelims. Unless there really was an invasion about to happen. Which meant Shikamaru would need to keep on his toes. What are you still doing up here, Shika? Flashback end. Birth of the New Demon King. Shikamaru sighed. I have a feeling this exam is about to get a whole lot more troublesome. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.